We're doing so good.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our October 28th Portsmouth Town Council meeting. Before we begin, I just want to go through the evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency, there are two doors on your left, another door at the front of council chambers. We would exit the building, cross Middle Road, and wait for further instruction at the school administration building. Now, if we could please stand for our pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for our men and women serving in harm's way.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you all. Okay, a little more housekeeping. We are live streaming tonight. So those of you that might be participating remotely via Zoom, there's an icon to raise your hand. If you're calling in on the phone, *6 will allow you to mute and unmute your phone. *9 will indicate to the host that you have a question. If you're participating remotely or in person tonight, please state your name and address for the town clerk. And with that, we'll begin with our roll call.
Ms. Abbott? Here. Mr. Gleason?
Here.
Mr. Levesque?
Here.
Mr. Payer?
Here.
Mr. Aguirre?
Here. Okay. All right, President's executive summary. There were no executive sessions before our council meeting tonight, so do not have anything to update from the executive summary standpoint. So we'll move on to our consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have minutes from our September 23rd meeting and our October 15th meeting and executive minutes.
Mr. President, I move that both pair of minutes be approved as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have tax voucher.
year 2025. Year-to-date revenues were at 29.8% of the total budget. Primary sources were tax receipts, building receipts, and real estate transfer fees. Year-to-date expenditures were at 25.4% of the total budget. Primary drivers were quarterly pension contributions, lease payments, and annual licensing fees. Revenues and expenditures continue to keep in line with the last 2 fiscal years, and field work for the 2024 fiscal year audit continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, move that it be received and placed on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. We're going to move on to new business. First item. It's the Portsmouth Business Association and the Rhode Island Park Preservation Society are joining forces to clean up the seawall in downtown Island Park on November 9th. Mr. Vitt?
John Vitkevich, 119 Hummock Avenue, Portsmouth, Rhode Island. The weeds are out of control. Looks like crap. I have to say, and I'm partial, that's probably the best vista we have on the island. Come down Park Avenue, look at the seawall, look at this, and it's so wide and open. November 9th, what I've done, I've tag teamed the Portsmouth Business Association and the Island Park Preservation Society members, as well as the public, to come out at 9 o'clock. We'll meet at Boyd's Lane at the big opening, and some will go that way, some will go that way. And the idea is to just get the weeds out. I have a non-toxic weed killer that we're going to put on them after we kill, I want them done. I want them gone. Thank you. And I hope to see a few council faces there because this will be after the election.
You do, what's the date?
November 9th, 9 o'clock. And if it's a rain date, we'll do it Sunday at 9 o'clock.
Our porch is right across the street. I'll come on.
I'm aware. Thank you. Oh, and just stuff like, I walked into Ace today and I know one of the guys there and I just, hey, we're going to be doing a cleanup on the seawall. He says, you need bags? So Ace is going to donate the bags and maybe we can leave them and Mr. Brian and his team at Public Works can pick them up the next day. Thank you. What do you say? Okay.
We'll see if we can make some accommodations for you. Thank you for all your
Thank you.
hard work down there.
And
Everything's
is
clean.
Mr. McGuire here? Where's Jim? I don't see him.
Mr. President.
I'll let Jim put it in the paper.
Are there any need for any waivers? I know it's basically state property, but we worry about that kind of thing.
I think you already know that answer.
Per DOT, curb face to curb face is DOT. Top of the curb, sidewalk, us. Seawall is like, let's.
Who wants it?
We don't. It does need work.
Switzerland?
It does need work. Like that's what they've kept telling me for years. They're very consistent in that curb face to curb face. The more of the weeds are growing up on top and around the light poles like that. So, but I thank you.
President,
Yes.
John, is there a flyer or something that we could put out? To get-
No, however, my poles are still up, so we're putting a banner up. The black and white banner, red at the big opening, the date, the time, like that, and just clean the seawall. And again, we have a vibrant Portsmouth Business Association and the Island Park Preservation Society has done some remarkable things in Island Park. I'm pretty proud of NOPO. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vick. Okay.
Yeah. Mr. President.
I think, I don't really know do we need to give any approval? No, this is just, you're just
Receive it.
going out and enhancing the community. I'll be down there. All right. Next, we have request the council approve Mark Collins of Pleasant Street Wharf to be added to the approved mooring vendor list. Chief?
Mr. President, members of the council, Police Department's requesting that Pleasant Street Wharf be added to the mooring vendor list. This has been reviewed by the Harbor Commission and approved as well as the Harbor Master.
Mr. President.
Mhm.
Move that it be approved as requested.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. Last item under new business is request approval to award the Portsmouth Transfer Station Solid Waste and Recycles operation to Waste Management Connections of Rhode Island. Mr. Woodhead.
Council President, members of the council, I'm here to present the recommendation to award the contract for the Portsmouth Transfer Station to Waste Connections of Rhode Island. We issued an RFP on September 19th, which maintained the current operational structure at the transfer station. The bids were due on October 18th. We received one single bid, and it was from our current contractor right now, Waste Connection of Rhode Island. So therefore, I respectfully request that the council award the P 2501 contract for solid waste and recyclable operations to Waste Connections of Rhode Island.
Thank you, Mr. Woodhead. Any questions, councilors, comments? Okay.
Mary McDowell, 94 Point Road. And good evening. I just come before you tonight for just clarification of an RFP process. So when an RFP process is going to be submitted, who works on this RFP besides, let's say, the town administrator?
Mike,
This is, it's an education for me, okay?
Okay. Mr. Woodhead, you want to weigh in? Sometimes it's the department heads and the purchasing department, finance.
Correct. So whoever's issuing the RFP is usually the department heads, and then we have our procurement agents, the finance department. Something was with the transfer station, though, we have lost the tax collector and stuff like that. We have a big department.
So there's a committee like, or?
It's not a committee, but we all review the same RFP. We have our town solicitor review the RFP also.
And may I just
Yep.
add, it's because sometimes we don't have the internal expertise even to do the RFP. That is kind of a problem sometimes. Most of the time, I think, and this may be true here, we're not inventing the wheel. There are other agencies. We have a relationship with the League of Cities and Towns. We have a relationship with other communities who have been doing or have done similar things. So oftentimes we can draw upon that. And we have people within the community with certain knowledge that we can in fact ask them if they have any notion. But finally, it does come before the council. We approve it and then it goes out for bids. If there are glaring errors in it, we find out quick enough.
Okay. So when the RFP is submitted, I looked at past agendas and it seemed like RFPs were, the town administrator notified the public and the council that an RFP was going to be submitted. Is there a process that says who is notified when an RFP is submitted? Or is it just a?
I don't think there's a defined policy, but.
No,
go ahead,
there is,
Mr. Rand.
there's no defined policy. The town council did direct that this RFP be issued at your January meeting where we discussed the operation of the transfer station. It was said then that we would issue the RFP towards the end of the year. We issued the RFP in September. We received the bids in October. That gives us a month to put together the anticipated ticket price, and it'll be presented to the council. The ticket price, provided you approve the bid on the RFP, will be presented to you in December.
Great. So,
But-
oh, sorry. No,
Well,
go
once
ahead.
again, there are entities out there that we are aware of. There are engineering concerns or magazines or something that we can generally find if it's this type of thing, or we know pretty much maybe the most of the vendors. So I will say it's usually somewhat ad hoc because you can't have a particular group for every different RFP. But I mean, usually we're trying to get the most competitive response that we can. So we try to find as many possible outlets so that we get attention to more people. And of course, everything's put on our website.
Right, okay. So in that case, that, with what you just said, when you say we, are you saying the council or the
No.
town administrator?
Very, the royal we,
The royal we.
all of us in
Okay.
collective unison with the one mindset for the
love
betterment
it.
of Portsmouth.
I love it. So I know that in January, the council did make a motion and it was approved to submit in December. Was there a reason why it was changed from then to now, to the date it was?
Yeah, it was towards the end of the year. We understood that to be, it would be completed by the end of the year. To get it completed by the end of the year, we had to issue it in September. The other driving factor here is at that same meeting, it was directed that we would issue an RFP for curbside waste collection pickup. As discussed back then, the curbside waste collection pickup program needs to be implemented sooner rather than later. The idea being that we would try to get people to sign up for the program in January. There's a tremendous logistics chain that needs to be accomplished to get this program on the ground and running July 1st. Not the least of which is the ordering of almost 10,000 bins, the establishment of the routes, obviously who's going to be on the route. You can't establish the routes until you know who's going to be on it. Then you run into the issue of, well, people will want to know, rightfully so, how do I compare the curbside? We're going to operate 3 waste collection services in Portsmouth. We have the Headley Street Transfer Station, we have the Prudence Island Transfer Station, and we will have curbside collection. People are going to want to know what is the price before they make their decision, I anticipate. We won't know what the price is for if we waited until December to issue the RFP. We would not know what the price is for the transfer station until probably March. By then, it's too late to get people signed up, routes established, bins ordered, in the program running by July 1st. So that is what drives. So we had to walk the timeline backwards from when does the transfer station contract need to be renewed? When does curbside need to be established and up and running, both on the same date, July 1st, 2025? You back that up. When do the carts need to be ordered? When does the route need to be established? When do people need to be signed up? What is going to keep them from signing up? Potentially the price. They're going to want to know what the price is compared to the transfer station. So the idea is they will issue both prices at that first meeting in December so people can make an educated decision as to which way they want to go.
Okay. And really, the reason I'm asking these questions is because on September 26th at the forum for candidates, the moderator of that forum implied by his question, and I think the question was to me, that an RFP had been submitted by the town for the transfer station. So I questioned that immediately because I had not heard anything about it, and I have been trying to stay on top of the issue. Mr. Hamilton, who was sitting right next to me, immediately interjected that indeed no RFP had been submitted yet, but would most likely be submitted in November. This, however, was not correct. An RFP for the transfer station had indeed been submitted on September 18th, 8 days previous to that forum, or
Yeah,
I heard you say the
absolutely
19th.
correct. I mean, had I to do it over again, I would have notified the council.
Oh.
But Mr. Hamilton did. Mr. Hamilton did make that statement based on what he believed to be true at the time. I since discussed this with him. I've discussed this with council members. There have been council members that have questioned this. And for the reasons that I just laid out, the issue that the RFP could not wait. That is why the RFP is issued. And exactly what is driving this, obviously other than the curbside, is so that people will understand that the transfer station is not closing. That was what the big issue was. So on the staff, from the staff perspective, that big ticket issue that everybody keeps wanting to talk about was addressed. It was addressed in January. The question was, is the transfer station going to close or is it going to stay open? That question was unequivocally answered in January. So the issuance of an RFP to maintain the operation of the transfer station did not seem to be an issue. It seemed to be pro forma to us, which is why our issue was how do we time it so that it's parallel with the timing of the pricing for the curbside.
I appreciate the explanation, but I will say that I felt badly for the councilman because he looked bad, because he didn't know the information, and it made Portsmouth look bad because no one had let the public know or council members know that this was done. And I just asked myself the question, why? And I do have a vested interest in it because I am running for a seat. And this would not be a good thing for me that a council member would not be informed that an RFP in an issue, especially like the transfer station, if a council member was not informed that an RFP would be submitted. That's all. I'm just saying, I don't think it's not transparency. And It
Mr.
looks
President-
bad.
Mr. President, if I can, my recollection, and I may be wrong, I certainly don't want to answer for Keith. There was a little bit of misunderstanding as to which RFP were we talking about? I believe by the time,
All right,
hey, thank you very
folks in
much.
the back,
I can
please.
finish my conversation without that. Thank you. Don't yell at me. In any event, one of them was for the curbside and one of them was for the transfer station. We had decided, I don't know how long ago, we're gonna go out for both. Okay, and one of it was the idea that this would in fact solve some of the people's problem and make sure they understood that the transfer station was still going to be there so they could do their usual pilgrimage. And so we did both. As far as I knew, we had done the curbside. We had already had a vote on the curbside. And the question was, and it was Mr. Pickering from the East Bay newspaper, then he did not understand, as far as I could see, many of the issues in town, and he conflated them. And maybe the issue was whether about the transfer station, but that was not my understanding when Mr. Hamilton responded, that has already been done. Now, whether he was embarrassed by something he gets embarrassed easily, I don't.
I would
We
be
were doing the
embarrassed.
best we could under what, in fact, we got from the community they wanted us to do. And we did it in a timely, and I can tell you, everything was done on television, so I'm gonna say transparent fashion.
Okay,
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
okay. All right,
Mr. President,
yes.
I would just like to clarify a couple things that I believe Mr. Levesque has said. One of the, I think you do, sir. One of the things that wasn't mentioned is we do have a consultant, and you have employed a consultant for the services, have you not?
Not for this service, just for the curbside.
Just for the curbside, okay, but we have a person that we consult with for solid waste issues in general.
If we need to,
yeah.
yes.
And we have a recycling coordinator, which is your assistant, Paul.
Correct.
So I would say he probably weighed in on this project as well. And we used to have a very hardy recycling committee. We've just lost another one tonight. That used to be, they're the ones that started pay as you throw, and they were, they were in favor of curbside pickup. And it's a big loss to this town that we don't have a committee. So I would urge people to consider, whether you want to be more involved in this curbside and transfer station conversations in the future. They could use help. I think I was confused. I think, I'm looking for a seat again, so I'm walking the street and people have told me, a couple of people have said, well, why don't you have a communications director? So more information gets filtered down to the public. And I personally don't think that we need one, but I think we need better communication. I've said it before. I was taken back when it went out in September because we weren't really told about it. But at this point, it's out, it's been done. It's probably a good thing because the longer we wait for prices, probably the more the prices are going to increase. So these people are out on a limb that says, starting in July, we're going to start this service, and they're predicting that in October or September, I should say. So I think it's a good thing for the town. In the grand scheme of things, it's a $50,000 increase from what we're paying now. And if people stay with the transfer station and we have 2,200 users, that portion of the price is like a $25 increase in your sticker. It's not going to be a $345 sticker because it'll be a yearly sticker. And if I'm not mistaken, the last year was $240 roughly for a year's service, I believe. So I would like to make a motion to approve the awarding of the Portsmouth Transfer Station solid waste and recyclables operation to Waste Connections of Rhode Island, pending a mutually agreeable contract by and between the parties and approved by the Portsmouth Town Council.
Just just to interject on that. The contract is the RFP. I just want, if you read the RFP, that is part of the contract. So when they sign that contract, they are obligated to everything that's in the contract and any addendums to that. So we don't go back and forth with contracts and negotiations, just clarify, Mr. Gleason.
The only thing I would say to that is, there was a section in your definitions that discusses the ability to negotiate between the parties. And, I just think that's a window that we should keep open.
Okay,
My opinion.
Mr. President, may I ask the administrator or perhaps counsel a question? So we have acknowledged that there is a deadline. We have acknowledged we want to put these things in place. Are we creating, if we vote along with Mr. Gleason's motion, a back and forth, a renegotiation of what we put out? And if so, is that going to push the calendar back?
No, I mean, any vendor that applies on the RFP, we always put that codicil in. And if there are gray areas, we'll sit down there and we'll iron them out and come back to the council. But this one, this is an RFP. And this operation has been in existence for decades. There's, other than what we've done over the last few years to clean it up, and the negotiations that we have, or lack thereof, with RIREC, when we find out what the tipping fees are going to be, there's really not a whole lot that gets done as far as negotiating back and forth. The rate is the rate. You go by the CPU. Fuel costs are fuel costs. The rate agreed to for the salaries for the caretakers over there. We've already done that when in the answering of questions when people were bidding on the RFP.
And yeah, again, there's a wheel already down there and we're not reinventing it. And I'm assuming, although I didn't read with that much alacrity, that the town is going to once again be in charge of the sticker program. We're going to handle all of that operation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, because that's part of the relationship. So there's a significant portion. There was a suggestion that it was going to increase. The idea is that, or the price was going to, the idea is that this is a separate entity that is obliged to essentially pay its own way. Is that correct?
That is correct. We don't know what the price is going to be yet. I mean, the first step is to approve the contract. Then we will sit down with the vendor. If there's any other last questions, we'll fix those. But then there's other factors that we have to incorporate into the the calculation to come to you in December with a sticker price. And if you'll remember, you also asked us to come to you with two prices. You asked us to come to you with pay-as-you-throw in the program and with pay-as-you-throw eliminated. So you'll get two prices to consider in December. But the short answer to your question is there's no surprises there. We will be prepared to present you a sticker price in December. We just need this month to calculate it. And if there's any questions to come up with regard to the RFP, this month gives us a chance to iron that out with the vendor.
Okay. The only other point I want to make is that for full disclosure, it is our anticipation that the curbside will be popular. If indeed it is popular, it will in fact draw away from the transfer station. If in fact that occurs, it may be for individuals who use the transfer station because there are certain fixed costs down there that their price might go up. In fact, we may have a genuine competition, which we have not had. The opposite is true. There may be people who decide that they don't want the expense of the curbside and they will come around and use the transfer station. I do not anticipate that, but it is a possibility. Okay. Both of these things are really kind of free market, even though we're creating something of a monopoly on the curbside, a free market solution to what has been an ongoing problem. And so time will tell.
All right. Okay.
Mr. President, Mr. Administrator, if you have no problem with the language that is proposed for approving of this, is that my understanding from you and the solicitor?
Well, I would just say that the motion would probably be more appropriate to read, approve the award as as recommended in the RFP, vice negotiation, because the negotiations have already been done.
Okay. Is that satisfactory to you,
And
Mr.
quite
Gleason?
frankly, that RFP, that also allows us year by year, as questions come up regarding whether we're going to do an extension of the contract or we're going to, there's a difference in which CIP we're using, we can negotiate with them in the future. So it doesn't hold our hands from negotiating going
Well,
forward.
and if I might add to that, I think we've talked about composting. We have talked about, there is still some concern about bulk matters. There's still some concern about yard waste. All of those, I think, are addressed in some fashion, but they may well have to be further defined as we go along. So I would anticipate there will be some further discussions. I just want to make sure we're not hamstringing ourselves by approving the language of the motion that Mr. Gleason proposed.
Yeah, just to be clear, no, I don't think so, but I just don't want people to think that we're now going to sit down and negotiate a contract. They've already bid on the contract. We told them what we wanted in the contract. And we answered all the vendors' questions leading up to this process, only one bid. So no, we're not hamstrung, but I don't want people to think that we're going to sit down now and negotiate a contract.
I could add, when we put out the RFP, which sets forth the terms and obligations that the contractor will be required to meet, and then by submitting a proposal, and the contractor is bound to follow those requirements. So we don't award the contract and then start from scratch and then negotiate a contract. It should just, the appropriate motion would be to move to approve the contract award as recommended by
And I would
EPW.
add this, you don't want to have RFPs out there with people anticipating that when they come back here, we might say, oh, we've changed our mind, we're going to change the particular items in it. So,
I would agree with you. That was never the intent.
oh, I don't
Okay.
think so.
So I'll just reference, the definition of terms of the offer on page 7 of the contract. Portsmouth reserves the right to negotiate final contract terms with any proposal selected. To me, without the recycling committee, we used to fall back on, there are some gray areas. First of all, what's going to affect our price is going to be the tipping fees. Brian has said they're going to be in the magnitude of a 10% increase, and this is done by RIREC. They're the ones that tell us how much the tipping fees are going to be, and it's going to affect the transfer station and the curbside as well. There's also a price for a second person at the transfer station. That really doesn't go away, but that's an option that the town has. If we get our numbers back and say people start going to the curbside and we need to tighten up our belt on the transfer station side, it is an option to say, well, there's less people. Maybe we don't need the second man down there, okay? But the biggest gray area for me that is bothersome is that, well, there's two areas, is the metals. Where people aren't dropping their fine gold and their copper and their aluminum. We're not separating it out anyway. So when our metal leaves the site, we're getting probably paid for scrap tin, essentially, for lack of better words. But we do in fact pay our hauler to haul it to a metals recycler, and we get $10,000 a year, but we pay $5,000 to get the metal to the hauler. I think there's a better solution out there, and I think that should be explored. But again, without a recycling committee to fall back on, that kind of puts the onus on us. And this is not the forum for that, but I'm trying to say there's some gray areas that I believe should be explored. What else is in there? Oh, the price to transport construction and demolition debris. I spoke to Mr. Woodhead prior to the meeting. Compared to the disposal prices that we pay, most of the disposal transportation costs went up, a relative amount of money. You can look at the scale, but for instance, the solid waste went from $26.96 per ton, $27.96 per ton to $30.76 for talking purposes. The price for C&D went from $46.76 to $110 per ton. But right now we have the option of doing something different with that. And basically it ends up with a solid waste. But, you know, should we be doing that? Should that price be different? That's the other area that I think is gray in my mind. So I just didn't want to, you know, we have 90 days on this quote, and I just think that it would give us a room to speak. The staff could speak about what I've just brought up and see if it's got any merit to it. And maybe we can save people some money. So that's where I'm coming from, Counselor.
Mr. President, I don't believe that motion by Mr. Gleason has a second. Am I correct?
No.
Then
Um,
therefore, without a second, I would move that we, in accordance with the request of the Director of Public Works, that we approve the award of the Portsmouth Transfer Station Solid Waste and Recyclable Operations Proposal number P 25-001 to Waste Connections of Rhode Island.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. I just want to, before we take any votes, I just want to weigh in here. And I respect your comments, Mr. Gleason, because there are some points that you brought up that, you know, may have gone through the recycling committee in the past, and, you know, that's at this point, though, it's a little too late to start to try to negotiate or renegotiate with a contractor once the bids are out and the bid is submitted. They had an addendum, there was issues. So at this point, if the contractor, in my experience and opinion, is going to be that they would say, take it or leave it. This is their bid. We can't start changing the terms because other contractors may have decided not to bid on this. So you really have to be very careful about changing the rules of engagement once you've issued an RFP and issued an addendum and accepted bids. So you brought up some valid points. I think the last time we did this contract, there was always the opportunity to renegotiate the cost at the end of the year based on, was it the consumer price, the price index, or if we did the 1-year extensions.
Correct. There's a consumer price index, believe it or not, for trash hauling, which we go by. But we're in constant, we have regular meetings with the vendor. We're in constant discussion with the vendors. You can't anticipate every single thing that's going to come up at the transfer station, but we do take care of them as they arise. With regard to the C&D, that decision was made. They upped that price because they don't really haul that much C&D, and it was cheaper for the town to put it in to haul it with the regular waste. So that will be a savings to the town. We're not going to pay that higher rate, but they had to include it because we asked for it in the bid.
Okay. All right. Any further questions, comments from counselors?
Is it too late when there's a motion and then it's seconded to just say something or not?
Yeah, you can
Okay,
make
all
a
right.
comment.
So if I understand it correctly, then the issues that Mr. Gleason brought up cannot be brought up
It was
with this RFP, right?
You didn't
So-
understand correctly.
Huh?
No, you did not. All of the things Mr. Gleason brought up could be part of a discussion between the administrator and the vendor,
Yeah.
if in fact there is a change in circumstances. What I think the council president very clearly indicated, which I neglected or failed to do, was that you can't start changing an RFP after you've got a bid, because the other bidders may say, hey, we might have participated if in fact that language was removed or in there or whatever. So we are pretty much obligated to either accept or reject this bid. And I am proposing that we accept it, but all of the other conversations can still be had depending on circumstances.
So can I give an example and can you answer this question? For instance, the second employee, if for instance, it is felt that you do not need the second employee, then can you discard that second employee? If your sales go down, let's say, is it in that wording that you could, it says alternate A. So does that mean that come right before it's time and we have X amount of people who have stickers, we can ask to omit that employee? Is that my
Yeah, that was
understanding?
addressed very clearly in the point on page 7, I believe it was, that Council Gleason brought up. We reserve the right. We cannot negotiate the RFP now,
Right,
right? But once we've awarded the contract, whoever we have awarded that contract to and has accepted the terms of that RFP, that contract, now, once we're under contract, if we want to negotiate something in that contract, we are perfectly within our right to do so because we reserve that right. So yes, the short answer to your question is yes, we could.
we could negotiate and be successful, you think?
We could, or they could say, we're walking away. You know, we always take that risk.
No, that's a fine distinction, though. You can negotiate, but the question is, will you be successful in that negotiation? Good point.
Exactly.
You might fail.
Exactly. And maybe that's another reason why an RFP should be discussed with council before it's put out. Because maybe Mr. Gleason would have said those things. I don't know.
Oh, God knows.
This is not the first go around with issuing this RFP. I'm very confident in the abilities of our staff to put together an RFP that they've done successfully in the past. The reality is we've got a very significant cost to run the transfer station, and we face it every time we have to assess the sticker values. If the folks that routinely use the transfer station, if they show up and buy their tickets, things should be okay. But if that number goes down, then the cost of those stickers is going to go up. And at a certain point, you've got to cover your cost. And the town takes a risk. The town is absolutely taking a risk if the fact that you enter into a contract and then instead of 2,000, you get 1,500, 1,400. We're going to run a deficit at the transfer station. It could be the same with any type of enterprise fund. So we're following a course that we have done several times in the past. I'm very confident in the department, Mr. Woodhead, the town administrator, our staff. You know, we do a very good job, and we are taking the town's best interests here. We've been talking trash my entire time on the council. I use the transfer station, but there comes a time where, and we all know it, if you don't get enough people to use it, then the people that use it may not be able to afford to continue to use it. So we're just trying to put, as Mr. Rayner said, and I remember these discussions clearly in January. In January, we were taking heat for not issuing the RFP in January. Now it goes out maybe a few weeks ahead of time. We all knew it was going out. So maybe the wires got crossed about the actual date it was going out, but no counselor should be surprised that the RFP was going out on the street. So, I mean, that's the reality. And, maybe it was a little bit of a miscommunication, but nobody was surprised that the RFP went out on the street. So at this point,
I was.
you were, okay.
I just wanna-
But you knew that you may be
I know it's
surprised it
going
was on the
out.
street, but you knew that the RFP was going out.
All I want to say is, and I'll end the conversation with it because I just want to add one more thing, is my last conversation with Mr. Rodriguez was, are we going out to bid soon? He said, we're going to go out in December. That wasn't that long ago that I had the conversation. But that was why I was surprised. And I'm, like I say, I'm glad it's out and we can get on with this thing. But, and I want to just say that I will be voting yes to this motion because it would be kind of silly me not to support the transfer station. It's not the way I would have liked the motion, but I will still support it. And I think that, with the alternate person, that's an option. I also think the metals thing is also an option because it's just a price to haul the metal. We get 100% of the proceeds. So those are just my concerns about it, and I will be voting in support of this.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Woodhead. Okay, future meetings. Next meeting is November 12th. It's a special meeting on Tuesday at the Portsmouth Middle School, 7 p.m., followed by November 25th, and then December 9th. As Mr. Rayner stated earlier. Election day is next Tuesday. So I wish everyone who is running all the best. All right.
Mr. President, I don't know if you're gonna have another meeting at the middle school, but I certainly wish you all the best, and of course, Councilwoman Abbott, all the best.
Thank you.
You came in smiling and you're leaving frowning.
That's a motion to adjourn.
They have at least one more meeting to get a
Yeah.
town tile.
Yep, yes. So at this point, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all, and we'll see you on the 12th.